Hey guys, it's Sam. How's your Christmas prep going? Have you made any Christmas gifts and do you feel ahead of the game? I would really love to know. In terms of food, for me, so far, I've actually prepped quite a few things. My cake is ready and it's got homemade marzipan on it. I know, I even made marzipan. That is the beauty of a Thermomix. I am brave enough to do things like that. What else have I got on the go? I've made some sweet orange pastry that's in the freezer. I've decided to freeze that in portions. So for those unexpected guests that might turn up at the door, the ones that don't tell you they're coming, but then expect some good food. So they're there, and I'll probably make quick puddings with that. I've also frozen a lasagna. I find things like that incredibly useful at this time of the year. My mincemeat is ready to make the mince pies fresh near Christmas Day. And I've also made some relishes, chutneys, that kind of thing that we will have with main meals, cheeses, that sort of thing over the Christmas period. Oh, and I've added some bread sauce and spiced cabbage to the mix too. They're in the freezer, ready to pull out and heat through rather than make from scratch on the day. It's all those small, rather insignificant things that I think make such a big difference. What do you think? I've also gone slightly mad and made myself a timetable for what else needs to be done and when I need to do it so that I'm ready for the big day. I have to say that even though Christmas is a quiet affair, it feels really, really good to be so ready for it. My burning question for you guys is, are you ready too? Now, I know I've just listed a whole lot of things that I have got ready. I don't want to panic you because you have got a lot of time still to get some of those things done and ready so that you can avoid the potential overwhelm that Christmas can bring too. Even if you just get one or two things made, you will feel a whole lot better when it comes to Christmas Day. Okay, today's episode, it's all about food waste, really. And I guess this is topical because we always get to the end of a Christmas day and have shed loads of food left over. No matter the numbers I'm cooking for, I always tend to over cater. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I don't know about you. It makes me want to make the most of the leftovers, as I really do hate wastage. I know it might seem early to be talking about this, but depending when you have listened to the episode, hopefully what we talk about today will be fresh in your mind when you open the fridge door on Boxing Day and wonder what to do with the turkey, the cheese, the veg, and all the other treats that undoubtedly will be staring back at you. I'm pretty sure we all have our favorite Christmas leftover meals, but I'll be sharing a few of mine later on in the episode, just in case I offer something new and you want to change it up. But do let me know some of your favorites, as I bet there are some real gems. So the usual thing, drop me a message however you want to, so we can share those ideas with everyone. But before we get into the nitty gritty of today's episode, I really, really want to share with you something that made me smile massively. I have received my very first voice note, and I guess I'm really excited about this because as a newbie to this, I wasn't really expecting to get it so soon in this journey. So a massive thank you to Elaine for getting in touch, and I'll play that message for you now. Amazing question, Elaine, and one I hope that I will keep tackling in many ways throughout the series of this podcast. I'm really glad you've asked it, though, as I know that you are not alone in facing this particular dilemma. Okay, so Elaine, it sounds like you're experiencing what I would imagine many of us as busy parents also experience, a little bit of meal prep burnout. That pressure of juggling work, family, and life can just make cooking feel like a chore. But I do promise you, nutritious, tasty, and quick meals do exist. And I hope the ideas I'm just about to share might help you rediscover some joy in your cooking. So first off, I would say start small so that you can refine your cooking groove. I'd say things like 1 pan meals, chicken thighs in the air fryer maybe with some vegetables, super easy, super simple. You've also got things like that 1 tray sheet pan dinner, salmon, broccoli, maybe some sweet potatoes or chips if you want to. And then pasta. I hate to say it, but pasta can be a savior for these scenarios. Easy to serve with a little bit of, I don't know, chicken and maybe some pesto that you might have made yourself. So that would be my first thing. Secondly, planning. I know it's boring. I keep saying it, but it really does help reduce all the stress that you might be feeling. It might feel hard, but just try and find about 20 minutes on a day that suits you and actually plan for some meals that you're going to make in the week. You could maybe use a meal planning app. You could try meal boxes if that might suit you, or simply stock up on some go-to ingredients so that if you have that plan, you're able to just pull those ingredients out and dinner will be simpler. If you have got a Thermomix, it's brilliant for this too. It offers meal planning and it has a growing recipe library to make cooking even easier. Another way is to incorporate batch cooking. Okay, dishes like chilies, bolognese, or you could even pre-make pizza dough, freeze it, and then pull it out as and when you need it. That means on really busy, hectic nights, you've got something super simple, super easy to just save time and energy in that meal process. I'm also going to say that I think mindset is really important, and shifting the perspective at meal times can make a massive, massive difference to how you feel about it. So maybe we could look at reframing cooking so that it's more about downtime rather than that feeling of it being a chore. So phone away, music on, or maybe a podcast, and make that kitchen space somewhere for you to unwind. I think a little change like that really can transform how you feel about that time of the day. And I guess involving the family would really help lighten the load as well. I'm thinking things like DIY wraps, fajitas, tacos, those sorts of things. So it's interactive, it's a little bit more fun, and actually the pressure isn't all on you to put food on the table. Everyone can be involved and hopefully have a good time. And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about finding solutions that really fit and work for you and your life right now. So I hope that what I've said and the suggestions that I've made can help you shift your perspective so that you can find and rediscover some joy in your cooking. Remember, though, you're not alone in feeling this way. And that's why I'm here with this podcast to support you and other people who probably are experiencing something similar. So thanks again, Elaine, for the question. I hope it's helped. And if you have a question or maybe just some wisdom to share with us from your kitchen, please do drop me a line, just like Elaine did as well. You can email the show at notpastaagain@hotmail.com or connect through my social channels, which are on the show notes. Okay, let's chat Christmas leftovers and that bigger topic of food wastage and looking to reduce it. It brings a wry smile to my face when I talk about this because food wastage and the guilt associated with it is just another level of complexity, stress, and overwhelm that we can feel when we're in the kitchen, on top of all those other things that we're juggling. I think it's safe to say that none of us deliberately set out to waste food. We all have good intentions to use up the food that we buy. But you know what? Life can get in the way. Or perhaps when we buy something, we don't always know what to do with it. So we can feel that pressure building, and it can just add that guilt that I just referenced. Ideally, of course, we'd like to avoid the guilt, but also the waste as well. I definitely am guilty of wasting food more times than I can count. And I'm going to say that that usually starts when I haven't got a plan. So picture me, I'm in the supermarket, probably hungry, worst time to do the food shopping, right? I spot an ingredient and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to make something with that for sure. I pop it into my trolley with all the best intentions, and then reality kicks in when I get back home. And as the week unfolds, that ingredient can just sit there looking sadder and sadder, literally and metaphorically, as I keep ignoring it. Eventually, it's on its last legs. I might cut around it, get the worst bits, throw those away, and then chuck the good bits into a sauce, maybe fry it off. But mostly, that's just about making myself feel better for using some of it. But if I'm honest, the old me would probably have thrown it away and felt pretty rubbish about doing it because I know that that's not what I should be doing. Does this sound like you too? I say the old me because now food wastage in my kitchen is definitely as low as it's ever been. I've made a real conscious effort to avoid it as much as possible. And I have to say that my Thermomix has been a huge, huge help. those sad looking ingredients that you can find in your fridge at the end of a week, well, they can almost always be transformed into something amazing and delicious with very, very little effort. So some of my go-to examples I would suggest in this scenario would be vegetable stock paste, soups, pastas, and then I'm looking at jams, stewed fruits for pies and crumbles with the fruit that sits there as well, getting a little bit sad. The list really does go on. Beyond that, though, planning, and yes, I always seem to come back to the same core habits. That has been a massive game changer. By planning what we're eating on any given week just means I really do buy just what I need. I just don't add any of those random extras on a whim. Yep, it might sound boring, but honestly, it's made such a difference. I've actually found a few stats around food waste in the UK, and I think they are pretty eye-watering. Are you ready? According to Waste Managed from their 2024 Food Facts and Statistics, the UK wastes approximately 9.52 million tonnes of food every year. That's the equivalent of filling Wembley Stadium 9 times over. And I just find that really quite staggering. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not just us in households, consumers. It does include the whole supply chain. So we're talking about supermarkets, restaurants, hotels, the whole shebang. But when Waste Managed report on us, the consumers, on average, each person in the UK wastes around 70 kilograms of food per year, which is the equivalent of 140 meals. So I think that's a lot. And when you actually convert that to cash, the average household spends £470 on food that ends up in the bin every year. So it's not only wasteful, it's an expensive situation too. Interestingly, Waste Managed listed the top 5 wasted food in the UK. I'll tell you number 1 now, and that was bread. I wonder if you know what the others might be. I'll be sharing them later on in the episode, and I've got some ideas around what you can do to avoid wasting those ingredients. So where do you sit on this? Do you feel like you waste food, or do you think that you've actually managed to lower this? And have you implemented some tactics to enable you to change this situation? If you have, what have you done? How have you combated it? It would be great to know. And between us, if we can give ideas to each other, we can help each other make positive steps in this area. So what if I had an idea? We pledged to open our fridge, look at what we've got in there, and maybe the veggies and fruits that don't stay in the fridge, and we can decide to use it, not waste it. If you do this, please do send me some pictures or messages of what you do so I can share a little bit of change that we can create together. So let's bring the chat back to this time of year, Christmas leftovers, and actually making the most of all the yummy food that we've either pre-made and reheated, or we've spent hours cooking on Christmas Day. We'd rather this than feeling the guilt of actually wasting it and possibly throwing it away. For me, I can't help but get nostalgic when I start thinking about this. I think my most favorite meal as a kid at Christmas time were actually the turkey sandwiches that were served late on Christmas Day and or maybe on Boxing Day. I absolutely love them, and I love them more than the main meal of turkey. It's a must to have these sandwiches, and I use any of those savory jams and chutneys that I've referenced earlier that I've made to jazz them up, make them a little bit more interesting. For me, there's Bubble and Squeak. Again, it uses my most favorite vegetable, Brussels sprouts. And I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I love Bubble and Squeak. And you can just bung it all into the saucepan until it's crispy, almost burnt, even better. And it is just delicious to enjoy. I also remember loads and loads of cheese at Christmas. My parents seemed to be eating cheese with crackers for weeks on end after the Christmas period. I personally just liked a little bit of Wensleydale with my Christmas cake because I didn't like cheese as much as I do now. But I have lots of cheese left over at Christmas these days. And what I do with it now is I will make it into an awesome quiche. It's just a really easy meal that you can put to good use of that cheese. I even asked some of my amazing networking colleagues about their go to Christmas meals with the leftovers. And not surprisingly, really similar things were mentioned. Turkey rolls, fajitas, curries, pies, bubble and squeak. But there was one savory one that really stood out, and it was a turkey risotto. And I bet that could be absolutely beautiful. You could use up the cheese and the veggies in the same dish as well. Although, I have to be honest, I wouldn't be caught standing and stirring a risotto on Boxing Day. But you probably know what I'm going to say, right? There's no stirring needed when you make a risotto with a Thermomix. So I know that you don't all have a Thermomix, but it really has been a godsend in this food waste journey that I have gone on. I can, as I said earlier, literally make anything with it really, really, really easily. And I'm sure some of what I'm planning to do with my leftovers that I'm just about to tell you could easily be adapted, and you could do it with equipment that you've got in your kitchen too. So, top of my list, I'll be making soup 100% veggie based. And if I want to, I could probably add some shredded turkey onto it as well. Dips. I always make them veggie based again because I tend to have loads of veggies left over. Might blend it all up, maybe add some chickpeas to change the actual texture. And that's going to be perfect for something like a lighter lunch. Bakes. Leftover turkey and veg bake, probably. Again, super simple, easy to chuck it together dish that you can just pull together with no effort at all. And I've just referenced it, quiche. Can't beat a good quiche. And for me, that's all about putting the cheese to good use. So I think my major tip at this point is be proactive. Okay. Have a think about what you can do with the likely culprits that are going to be sitting in your fridge post Christmas Day. You're probably going to have the turkey, the vegetables, and the cheese that I've just been talking about. And if you are proactive and you think about how you can use them and have some ideas in your mind, you're one step closer to using that food rather than throwing it away. So that bake that I referenced just before, you can freeze it in portions for meals later on in January. It is the longest month of the year. The same goes for the soup. It can be frozen. So don't think that all your leftovers have to be eaten in the near future, because they just don't. Your freezer is your friend at this time of year. Use it. Which brings me into another tip or another idea, perhaps an obvious one again, but I do think this gets overlooked quite frequently as well. How we store our food has a massive impact on how it keeps, and in turn, how long it will actually last. So, obviously, I've just mentioned freezing, and you can do that in portion sizes. So, they're super easy to heat up for the different families that we have to cater for. And I think the freezer is a massive, massive godsend when it comes to not wasting food generally. So if you see something on the side in the fridge that looks like it's close to the edge, it's going to go, choose a dish, make it, and freeze it. That way, it's going to get used up. I think that general notion of moving away from thinking that everything in your fridge and everything in your cupboard has to be eaten immediately is a valid one. Freezing food is really, really useful in preventing waste. I think of pesto when I think of this as well, because that can be frozen in an ice cube tray. So again, it's portion controlled and you can just pull it out as and when you need it. I often do this when I'm getting towards the end of the homemade jar, and I might use it on pizza. So that pizza dough that I talked about freezing in batches, I use it there. Again, a really simple dinner for the boys, and it avoids pasta. Herbs. Often my nemesis again. Doesn't matter if they're homegrown or store bought. I often end up throwing part of that pack away. I haven't quite worked out how to use them all up. However, a really good tip was told to me by a good friend, and this definitely elongates their life. If you loosely wrap herbs in a damp paper towel and keep it in a well-sealed container or bag in the fridge, it lasts for way longer. But even before the freezing option, we need to ensure that we are storing our food appropriately, because if we're doing that, we're just going to lengthen the fridge and the shelf life a long, long way. And so what I'm tending to do at the moment is I store all my food in vacuum sealed containers and bags. It takes away the air, which just means that the food is not exposed and it will last a lot longer. And of course, you do need to sterilize jars that you might be using. So when I'm making anything like a sauce or the pesto that I just referenced, I will sterilize the jars. I do tend to do that with my Thermomix, but it's super easy to do with just putting some boiling water in them and letting them dry naturally. It just means then by doing that, they're remaining sterile. Again, I know, pretty dull, right? But it makes a massive difference to your food wastage for sure if you know that stuff that you've put into a jar is going to last longer because it is in a sterile environment. And then, of course, I've touched on this already in this episode when I was talking to Elaine at the beginning, planning and more planning. It is a broken record, I know, but it is a very simple process too, and it will help food seemingly go further. And it just means less is wasted for sure. Just by knowing what you're going to be making, getting those ingredients in, just means you're not going to waste food, and it makes you feel so much better about your food scenario. So, to end this episode, let's look at those top 5 most wasted food items by us, the UK consumer. And I'll tell you how I make use of them, particularly when they're on their last legs. It did raise a question in my mind, and it makes me wonder why these are the ones that get wasted the most. I wonder if it's because they are not expensive. Is it because people don't know what to do with them? Like, what drives people to not use these ingredients in particular? Either way, maybe we can just share some more ideas and we can help ourselves waste them less. After all, if we do it, it's a little bit, but it helps. So let's get to the list, Sam. Top of the list was bread. And what I tend to do with bread when it's reaching the end of its toasting life, because it's bread, we eat it fresh, then it gets toasted. I make breadcrumbs out of it. I will blitz them in the Thermomix. I'll throw them into a bag. They go into the freezer and then I can use them for anything. They might go in meatballs. They might go on the top of mac and cheese. And I might even add some of those herbs that are on their last legs so that it is a flavored breadcrumb topping. So a very simple thing that you can do with the bread that is not looking too good. Second on the list, potatoes. Now, I'm not a massive eater of potatoes now. I was in the past, and I am definitely guilty of watching my potatoes grow very strange shaped sprouts or roots, whatever you want to call them, snapping them off and then trying to use the rest of the potatoes so long as it isn't too soft. My mum has also told me, drilled this into my brain, that if there's any green on a potato, the whole potato has to go because it's poisonous. But I'm not actually sure if that's true. So if someone could confirm, that would be amazing. But potatoes need to be stored properly and they need to be stored well. They need to be in a cool, dark, and well ventilated place. And apparently, another rumor, they need to be stored away from strong smelling foods like onion. Again, if somebody could confirm this for me, that would be amazing. And remember, they freeze really, really, really well. So if you've got cooked potatoes or if you need to cook some potatoes, boil them, put them in the freezer, and then they'd be perfect for roasties on a Sunday if you need them, or maybe to add into a soup to thicken it. So many ideas that you can have to use up your potatoes. If I've got leftover cooked potatoes, then what you can do is repurpose those really simply. My boys love fish cake, so that's just got the potato added in it. I come back to bubble and squeak, that sort of thing. But you really can get creative with potatoes. So, third on the list was a bit of a surprise for me, and it was milk. I guess in our household, I'm pretty good at just buying what we need. But if you do find yourself having milk left over, then I'm think, I don't know, mac and cheese, puddings like rice pudding, or maybe even a cheese sauce. You can actually freeze all of those 3 things that I've just mentioned too. And remember, you can actually freeze milk. It's absolutely fine. It looks a little bit lumpy when you take it out, but just give it a shake and it's absolutely good to go. However, you have to do all of this before it's actually gone and turned sour and, isn't usable. So with number 4, I was really surprised that this wasn't higher up on the list. So what do you think it might be? Well, it's bananas. It is such a difficult fruit, right? Because everyone has a different point that is perfect for them to eat a banana. And I have to say that it's really easy to miss that window of perfection. So they can just be left to get browner and browner and browner. So I can tell you now, I make a lot of things with bananas. I can make muffins, I can make cakes. I even steam those sometimes rather than turning the oven on. And bananas are great frozen. If you cut them into pieces, blend them up, and you have a beautiful banana ice cream. One of my favorites, though, is a delicious Thermomix granola, which is called banana oat clusters. It's a naturally sweetened breakfast cereal. So, bananas, they can be also used very, very effectively, irrespective of their color. And lastly, perhaps not a surprise on this one, it's sort of the salads and the vegetables. We've sort of referenced it as we've gone through this podcast. And this is where the meal planning, again, is really, really important. So you've just got the right quantities. I'm not liking bagged lettuce when I think of these sorts of things. And in particular, I always get caught out with spinach. I have been guilty on numerous occasions of only using half the pack for a curry and the rest just sitting and getting soggy at the back of the fridge. I never learn. You think I would. So I need to put something into practice there to ensure that I do not waste my spinach anymore. But again, what I'm doing with those sorts of things is stocks, soups, the simple things I mentioned earlier. Reducing food waste doesn't just save us money. It's a small but very meaningful way for us to help the environment. Whether it's freezing your bread, freezing your bananas, repurposing your potatoes, or planning your meals better, every little bit adds up. You know what? I actually think that this is a huge topic and probably can be explored more. So I think I'm going to revisit this in a later episode. So let's keep the conversation going. Keep telling me how you are combating food waste, or if you need any guidance on how to do this. Share your tips, share it with all of us, and let's waste less together. And I will keep sharing any ideas that I get in subsequent episodes that we do. And judging by the amount of freezing I keep mentioning and suggesting, you might want to stick a chest freezer on your Christmas wish list. I can honestly say it's on my wish list, so fingers crossed, right? So, with that in mind, I think we'll skip an episode over Christmas week, and the next episode will actually be released on the 1st of January, focusing on New Year, New You in the kitchen. So, I hope Christmas goes really, really well. I really hope it isn't stressful and that you get the support that you deserve and need in the kitchen. If you're not hosting, then savor every moment of someone else cooking for you and enjoy the rest. And please do let me know how it goes with all of those leftovers and what you do with any that you've got. So, chat to you soon. But until next time, please don't feel overwhelmed in the kitchen, because together we really can flourish rather than flounder with food. Oh, and Merry Christmas.